Now, contracts are often called different things. As you'll know, they're called memorandum of understandings, they're called agreements, purchase orders, service level agreements. Service level agreements usually a service agreement between two parties, one's providing the other. It just really is down to the terminology of the organisation that you're working with. But in the contract, you would have terms and conditions. And they're really important because, if it says that you're doing a construction project, then the terms and conditions would have to cater for bad weather and things like that. And if they don't, then everyone's going to get burnt. But so your terms and conditions are really important. You'd have to have clear points of payment. So it might be that you have a payment schedule, which is based on material supply, and then they invoice you and you pay it. Or it might be that they're going to provide a whole bunch of stuff and they do it over a sequence of dates or whatever it might be. Specific product service provisions will also be included, and obviously a schedule. And I know I keep on going about it in everything we do, but exclusions are important as well. Now, there are different sorts of models, and they are detailed in PMBOK, but the ones that are most commonly used are fixed, like you'll get a fixed contract, we'll provide you with this and you'll pay me that, and if I've got to provide you extra, then you still pay me the same amount. And in that sort of situation, obviously you usually pay a little bit more because people put a contingency in there. But the opposite end of that is the time and materials. I'll bill you for however many hours I'm there, even if I'm there for the next 5 years. So that's where your terms and conditions come in, because you obviously try and put some boundaries around that. So when we're looking at the wider picture, if you are working for a large organisation and you're doing a project within that, procurement's a really important one to actually consider as to what their other policies might be. So they might have procurement policies, they might already have standing agreements with other suppliers. So it might be computer equipment, it might be stationery, it might be electrical services, it might be whatever you're doing. So if there is a procurement manager or procurement policy which is outside the project, you need to make sure you bring them into the project and get their involvement. So quite often the procurement procedures will actually, or procurement policies will tell you who's who in the zoo when it comes to approval points for money. So they'll actually tell you that if you've got a CapEx or a capital expenditure item, how much this level of manager can sign for and how much that level of manager can sign for and things like that. So obviously you would have to immerse yourself in that as part of the project or get direct advice as to what you are allowed to do or who you need to discuss this with. Another one that's a common one is quality or occupation health and safety. If you're part of a larger organisation, the quality assurance aspects of your project will impact the organisation as well. It's the same with any ISO certification. If you've got quality, occupation health and safety, environmental certification or anything like that, and you are undertaking those sorts of activities within your project, you need to make sure that you've got those people involved, or you give them the opportunity to have some buy-in. If they don't, then they don't. But you've got to prove the fact that you've done that. And of course, occupation health and safety, because if you don't, then that's the thing that will. If you don't do things in the same manner that somebody else does in the company, then it's going to cause you some pain if somebody gets hurt. So in the wider picture as well, especially when it comes to procurement and contract management, you need to look at the other projects that are going on within your organisation, if there is such a thing. So if your project is to roll out a major software application across an area, and you don't know that there's another project going on where they're actually updating the PCs, one's going to conflict with the other. Or if you've actually got projects where the same supplier is supplying two projects, there's a good chance that they'll run out of materials, they won't be able to deliver on time because they're doing to that one over there, and they'll use that as an excuse because they're still supplying the same company. Oh, but your mates down the corridor want this and this and this. You want to make sure that you cover your requirements for your project to make sure that you're not the one that's left sitting on the shelf when it comes to the work that needs to be done. And risk management, obviously, when we went through the risk management exercise, we particularly looked at what the risk tolerance was for an organisation. So when we went through the numerical evaluation of each risk based on impact versus probability, we then averaged it over all the risks, and then we said, okay, based on the organisation's risk tolerance, we recommend blah, blah, blah. And this will be an important part of any procurement. So it might be, for example, that you are having to deal with a supplier that they don't have a good relationship with. So you need to make sure that somebody knows about that, so that if they don't perform well, then it just doesn't come back on you, where you say, well, you should have known better, you shouldn't have dealt with them in the first place. So you need to think about the risk and what the elements of the risk are that you've identified in your risk management plan, and you may find that based on the fact that you've got to use a particular supplier, you've actually got to put more risk mitigation in your plan because you've found out other things you should have to look after. And obviously involve your legal counsel. Now, if you don't have legal counsel, that's usually what a company secretary does in an organisation. A company secretary sounds like they shuffle paper, but they don't. Oh, well, actually, legal people do. But usually it's the company secretary of an organisation that will put the legal position of that organisation into practice. So if there's no other legal person around, the company secretary or somebody like that will coordinate it, and then they may liaise with external bodies as well. But in your own projects, if you're running a smaller project, then obviously if you need legal advice, you need to find a solicitor that understands the topic that you're going through and that you can build a relationship with, so that you make sure that they will review the contracts that you receive and also give you a good position on the contracts that you want to give out. And also existing commitments, obviously that's going back to the same sort of thing as the other projects, but commitments might be your commitments, it might be other people within your project as well, so the internal people. So a particular project that I was working on was a large, fairly major takeover in the agricultural business, and the people that were working in this project had full-time jobs in their own job, but they were actually expected to do a full-time project management role as well. And so you get to the stage where they just cannot do it, and that's when you need to look at contractors to either backfill them in their current positions, or they actually can't do it and you just want them to mentor somebody else that's going to come in rather than take the full-time job. So PPM, Project Procurement Management, PPM, is just another TLA. Do you all know what a TLA is? A three-letter acronym. So what you'll actually be doing in your assignment is creating a procurement management plan. Then you'll need a statement of work of some sort. This is what I was talking about, where it's similar to a position description where you have KRAs and KPIs and all the rest of it, but you would actually specifically state what you want them to do. Now, some of you have already done that in your assessment materials for the PD because you didn't have an individual you could do that for. So, and then you may have an invitation to tender. So this is the cycle you would go through. You would actually identify that you want an external party to come into your project and do something. You would be clear in a statement of works or whatever you're going to do about what they've actually got to do. So it's like a position description for that procurement item. And then you send out an invitation to tender. You'd send it out to the big bad world, and there's plenty of places that actually capture that and send it to the relevant organisations. And you send out the invitation to tender, request for information, the tender document, the request for proposal, whatever you want to call it, the FRED document, because we all like FRED. And when that goes out into the stratosphere, then you start getting responses back, and you want to be able to manage the responses as much as you want to manage what you send out to the organisation, of course.